You know what surprises me most after more than 30 years of working with women who've been through complicated relationships? It's not that he comes back after months of silence. What truly gets me every single time is that we, being as intelligent and perceptive as we are, women who can read between the lines in every other area of our lives, suddenly go emotionally blind the moment that notification pops up on our phone. A patient of mine, a sharp, accomplished woman in her early 60s from right here in the Chicago area, sat across from me not long ago and said, "Dr. Kingsley, I know it's manipulation. I can see it plain as day, but something inside me just lights up when he texts." And right there was the key to everything. It's not about what we know rationally. It's about what happens in our emotional brain when certain neurological circuits get activated. Circuits that were programmed long before we had the wisdom and life experience we carry today. When a man disappears and then comes back, he's not just sending a message. He's asking a very specific question. Are you still available to me without me having to be available to you? I call this the emotional access question, and how you respond to that question will determine whether you fall back into the same pattern all over again, or whether you finally break the cycle for good. But before we talk about how to respond, I need you to understand something fundamental about your own brain. When someone who meant something to you reappears after silence, it activates what neuroscientists call the intermittent reward circuit. It's the exact same mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive. You don't know when the reward is coming, but you know it sometimes does. And that uncertainty triggers a dopamine release that's actually more intense than if the reward were consistent. Your brain literally becomes addicted to emotional inconsistency. And this is why a stable, steady relationship can feel boring after you've been riding that chemical roller coaster for months or even years. Now sit with me on this for a second. How many times have you thought he'd changed because he came back? Because there's a cognitive trap here I want to unmask with you. The human brain is wired to look for patterns and assign meaning in us even when there isn't any. When he reappears, we automatically build a story. He must have done some reflecting. He probably realized what he lost. Maybe he's finally ready. But the neurological reality is a whole lot simpler, and paradoxically more complicated than that. His return doesn't signal change. It signals need. And there is a world of difference between those two things that I want you to hold on to. Need is circumstantial, emotional, reactive. It shows up when he feels empty, when someone else rejected him, or when he's just feeling nostalgic on a Sunday night. Need is about filling a temporary void. Change, on the other hand, is structural. It's conscious. It holds up over time, regardless of outside circumstances. When someone has genuinely changed, they don't come back with a casual, "Hey, stranger," or "I had a dream about you." They come back with clarity, with real explanations, with a concrete plan, and most importantly, with consistency between what they say and what they actually do in the weeks that follow. Here's something I've observed in my practice over 3 decades. The women who truly break free from these cycles, not just intellectually understand them, but actually live differently, they all share one thing. They've learned to distinguish between the chemical activation happening in their brain and their own deepest values. They know that feeling something doesn't mean they have to act on that feeling. And this brings me to a concept I want to give you today: emotional sovereignty. Emotional sovereignty doesn't mean not feeling. It means feeling everything fully and then consciously deciding what to do with those emotions. It's the difference between being reactive and being responsive. When that text comes in after months of silence, your limbic brain fires before your prefrontal cortex even gets a word in. That's normal. That's biology. But between that automatic activation and your response, there is a space. And in that space lives your power to choose. Now I want to go a little deeper with you. Why is it so hard to close doors we know are hurting us? Because we're afraid of what I call the symbolic death of possibility. Closing that door means admitting that the story, the one we imagined, the one we hoped for, is never going to happen the way we pictured it. And that hurts more than just keeping the illusion alive. But here's what you need to understand about grieving possibilities. It's a necessary process. It has to happen so that real possibilities can be born. While you keep doors open that drain your emotional energy, you simply don't have the internal space to recognize or receive something genuine. I've worked with women in their 50s and 60s and even 70s who were still waiting for a man from their past to grow up. Brilliant women, successful women, women who make smart, clear-headed decisions in every other part of their lives, except this one. And it's not because they're foolish or naive. It's because something in the female psyche has been deeply conditioned by culture, by upbringing, by decades of messaging to believe that our love can transform another person. But here's a truth that nobody tells you straight. Your love cannot change anyone. Your love can only nourish what's already there. It can amplify what already exists. If the capacity for commitment, for presence, for genuine reciprocity doesn't exist in him, your love, no matter how deep and real it is, cannot create it from scratch. And this brings me to something I see constantly in my practice: the confusion between intensity and depth. A text after months of silence creates intensity, not depth. It activates you. It gets your heart going. It makes you feel alive again. But depth is built day by day with consistent presence, with sustained reliability, with small everyday gestures that back up words. Intensity is like a firework, spectacular, thrilling, but gone in seconds. Depth is like the roots of an old oak tree. You can't see it. It grows slowly, but it holds everything up. Here's one of the most revealing questions you can ask yourself when he reappears. Not why did he come back, but what do I actually need from this situation? Because if you're honest with yourself, really honest, you might discover that something in you is activated by his return too. Maybe the feeling of being desired, of being remembered, of still having some kind of power over someone who once made you feel powerful. Recognizing this isn't something to be ashamed of. It's human, but awareness is everything. Because only from a place of real self-awareness can you choose differently. Women who've moved past this pattern have learned to get that feeling of being desired and valued from steadier, more nourishing sources. They've invested in relationships where they don't have to guess, where they don't have to decode signals, where they don't have to walk on eggshells. Because let's be real, a relationship where you're constantly trying to figure out whether you matter, where his silence is a message and his presence is unpredictable, that is not a relationship. That is an emotional puzzle designed to keep you occupied and anxious. Your nervous system was not built to live in that kind of permanent uncertainty. And when you live in that state for years, which many of you have, your body starts to show it. Insomnia, digestive problems, headaches, fatigue, tension that lives in your shoulders and your chest. I hear this from women in my practice all the time. And I heard it just recently from a woman who told me she'd been dealing with stomach issues for 2 years before she made the connection to the emotional stress of being in this on-again, off-again situation. Your body is spending an enormous amount of energy trying to decode inconsistent signals. That is not a small thing. The chronic stress of emotional uncertainty elevates cortisol, suppresses your immune system, and accelerates aging. You are literally paying with your health to keep open a door that's draining you. Now, I want to offer you a different way to look at silence. When someone disappears knowing full well the harm they're causing you, they are not being passive. They are making an active choice to prioritize themselves over your emotional well-being. And that tells you everything you need to know about their values and their capacity for mature love. Mature love includes emotional responsibility. It includes clear communication, even when it's uncomfortable. It includes the courage to be honest about what you feel and what you cannot offer. Silence as a response to your emotions is emotional cowardice dressed up as mystery. And I want to draw a clear line here between two very different things: giving someone space and disappearing. Giving space sounds like, I need some time to process this. Let's talk in a few days. Disappearing is simply not responding, not explaining, leaving the other person to fill the silence with their own anxiety and self-doubt. A person with emotional maturity can need space. They do not need to vanish. Disappearance is a strategy of emotional control, conscious or not. When he comes back after pulling that disappearing act, he is checking how much power he still has over you. He's verifying whether you can still be activated by his presence or absence, and the way you respond gives him that information. But, and this is important, don't respond from anger. Anger gives him power too. Respond from the serenity of someone who has understood the pattern and decided not to play anymore. The most powerful response is not always confrontation or explanation. Sometimes it's simply not responding at all, not out of spite, out of self-respect. There is a massive energetic difference between ignoring someone for revenge and not responding because you've chosen to protect your own peace. When you ignore out of revenge, part of you is still locked into the game. When you don't respond because you're taking care of yourself, you're choosing to invest your energy somewhere that actually feeds you. Let me ask you something. How much mental energy have you spent analyzing 3-word texts? Trying to decode what, "Hey, hope you're well," really means? I've had women tell me they spent entire weekends, whole weekends, going back and forth on a single message, reading it in different tones, asking friends what they thought, losing sleep over it. That same energy could have gone into your friendships, your health, your creativity, your grandchildren, the things that make your actual life rich. Every minute you spend thinking about someone who can't give you clarity and presence is a minute you're not available to recognize and receive what could truly nourish you. I call this the emotional opportunity cost, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's something paradoxical I've observed over and over again. The women who ultimately attract healthy relationships are the ones who've learned to be completely available to themselves first, not from desperate loneliness, from genuine fullness, because there is a world of difference between being alone because you can't find anything better and choosing your own company because your standards are clear enough that you'd rather be with yourself than accept anything below what you deserve. When you develop the real capacity to enjoy your own presence, when your inner peace doesn't depend on someone else's validation, something shifts. You start drawing in people who've done their own work, people who value emotional steadiness over dramatic intensity. Now let's get practical, because I know that's what a lot of you are here for. You've already read the books, you already know the theory. You want to know what to actually do. First, give yourself time before you respond to anything. There is absolutely no urgency in replying to a message from someone who disappeared for weeks or months. If there were real urgency, the communication would have never stopped in the first place. Take 24 hours, take 48. Use that time not to craft the perfect response, but to check in with yourself. Second, before you respond, ask yourself honestly, what do I actually want from this? Not what you hope will happen. What do you want? Do you want clarity? Do you want an apology? Do you want to genuinely explore whether something has changed? Or are you responding out of politeness, out of habit, out of that old pull? If what you want is clarity and he can't offer it directly and honestly, you already have your answer. If you want a genuine apology and he minimizes or justifies his behavior, that is also an answer. Information is never a waste. Third, know which scenario you're in, because not every situation is the same, and this matters a lot. If he's texting casually after a period of silence, no acknowledgement of what happened, just acting like everything's normal, that tells you something specific about where he's at. If he's coming back after a real ending, after a clearly defined breakup, that's a different conversation. And if you're running into him in real life, at church, at the grocery store, at a mutual friend's dinner party, that's yet another scenario that requires a different kind of grounded response. Give yourself permission to respond differently based on what's actually happening, not based on one universal rule. And for those of you asking, but what if it's a marriage? Or what if it's someone I share a family with? Those are real and complex situations that deserve their own full conversation. And I'll be addressing those specifically in an upcoming episode, because those dynamics have layers that a general framework can't fully hold. Now let me address something I know is in the back of a lot of your minds. But what if this time he really has changed? What if I don't respond and I miss my chance? Behind that question is a deep fear. The fear that this might be the last opportunity to feel butterflies, to feel that kind of connection, to feel chosen. I hear you, I really do. But I need to tell you clearly and from the heart, a real opportunity for love does not come dressed up as crumbs after silence. A real opportunity arrives with clarity, with presence, with consistency between words and actions. Mature love doesn't play hide and seek. It doesn't show up and ghost you. It doesn't leave you guessing whether you matter. Mature love is clear, consistent, and it makes you feel safe in its presence, not anxious in its absence. Sometimes we close a door not because we hate what's behind it, but because we love what might be ahead. Closing the door to inconsistency is how you open a window to real possibility. I also want to name something that doesn't get talked about enough: Misplaced loyalty. So many women hold on to connections that are hurting them because of a deep sense of loyalty to what was once good, to the potential they saw, to the version of that person who showed up beautifully in the early days. But loyalty to your past cannot be stronger than loyalty to your future. I've watched brilliant women become archaeologists of dead relationships, constantly digging for signs of life, interpreting every small gesture as evidence that something could still be revived. There comes a point where you have to ask yourself, am I nurturing life or am I feeding a ghost? Because here's the fundamental difference. Love wants what's best for the other person, even if that means letting go. Attachment wants to maintain the connection, even when maintaining it causes pain for both people. Love can release. Attachment holds on, even when holding on hurts. And here's what I want you to know about what happens when you let go. When you stop dispersing your energy into directions that don't lead anywhere real, something is released in you. Energy that was tied up in the past becomes available for the present. You stop vibrating from a place of scarcity, from please love me, and you start showing up from a place of fullness, from I know my worth. That frequency is different. It draws different experiences toward you. I've witnessed genuinely extraordinary transformations in women who had the courage to release what wasn't working, not just in their romantic lives, but across everything. Their health improved, their friendships deepened, their relationship with themselves changed in ways they hadn't expected. That's not magic. That's what happens when you stop fragmenting your energy and start showing up as a coherent whole person. And coherence has power. I want to address one more thing I hear often. But he's not a bad person. He's just emotionally confused. He's scared of commitment. He's going through something hard. And all of that may be absolutely true. He may be a genuinely good person working through real struggles. But, and I say this with full compassion, you are not his therapist. You are not his rescuer. You are not responsible for his emotional growth. You can have deep compassion for his process without sacrificing your well-being for it. You can genuinely want the best for him without remaining available for his inconsistency. Because for someone to be genuinely growing, they need to want to grow, and they need to be taking real, concrete action toward it. If what's happening is just the same pattern on repeat while they wait for your infinite patience, that's not growth, that's stagnation, and they're asking you to stagnate with them. There's a difference between giving someone an opportunity and giving them infinite chances. One opportunity, after an honest conversation, after a genuine apology, after real and sustained change, that can make sense. Infinite chances in the face of the same repeated pattern, that is self-abandonment. Your heart is not a way station where someone can check in when they feel like it and check out when something better comes along. Your energy is not an unlimited resource to be spent on people who don't know how to value it. Your time, at this stage of your life, is something you simply cannot get back once it's gone. I say that not to create urgency or fear, but because the women I sit with, who are in their 60s and 70s, often tell me that one of their deepest regrets is the years spent waiting, analyzing, hoping, years that could have been lived fully for themselves. So, when he comes back, and he probably will, I want you to remember this. Your value is not measured by his ability to recognize it. Your worth does not depend on his capacity to commit to you. Your right to be loved clearly and consistently is not up for debate, regardless of what he can or cannot offer. You are complete without him. You are valuable without his validation. You deserve love that is steady, honest, and present, with or without his ability to provide it. And understanding that is not arrogance. It is sanity. It is what 30 years of sitting with women in their most vulnerable moments has taught me more clearly than anything else. Because the real question, the one that actually matters, is not whether he has changed. The question is whether you have grown enough that you no longer need him to change in order to be at peace. Whether you've healed enough to recognize real love when it shows up, instead of mistaking intensity for depth. Whether you value your own presence enough to stop spending your one life waiting on someone who can't show up fully for you. That is the real transformation. Not getting him to be different, becoming someone who no longer needs him to be different to be okay. And from that place, from that kind of self-knowledge and wholeness, everything that comes into your life will be of a fundamentally different quality. Because you will have finally learned, not just in your mind, but in your bones, that you deserve presence, not disappearing acts. You deserve clarity, not emotional riddles. And size. You deserve consistency, not intermittent intensity. And when you know that, really know it, everything changes.